Recording in progress.
Yep. Good morning, everyone. So, in our previous class, we learned about how to handle, uh, we learned just basic of this class reusability. Yeah? So, we learned about reusability and extensibility. So, JavaScript classes related, what topics we learned is class declaration and expression. So we learned about class members. In that we have properties, method, accessors, and constructor. And we discussed about reusability and extensibility, how it works. And we learned about some rules. Reusability can be achieved by using aggregation. Aggregation, another one is inheritance. By using aggregation and inheritance, we can achieve that. These are all JavaScript classes related basics. I one more time refreshed all the topics for people who are completely not aware of them. Because in JavaScript, you already learn these things. JavaScript, OOP language concepts already you learn. I just given one more time a fast overview. And you know already JavaScript support will not support all features. So then only few features are supported, which we learned. One more thing you should know, a simple point is about how JavaScript handles polymorphism, how the concept of polymorphism works for JavaScript, especially while dealing with the class. Actually, what is the concept of polymorphism and how we can implement this polymorphism? So generally to understand polymorphism, what is the concept of polymorphism? Let's see. I will give a general example. We have a general concept like we have some devices like we have a pager, we have a digital organizer, so we have camera, and we have a phone. These are different devices: pager, digital organizer, camera, phone. These are different devices. Actually, pager is a device. It is used for sending SMS. So it is used to send SMS. For example, we have a pager. A pager device looks like this. So this is a pager device. Usually pager look like this. This is a pager device. That is a pager. Usually we use these pagers for sending messages, SMS. Before we got mobiles, we were using these pagers very much. We, before the mobiles concept came, these pagers were there. Here we can send only SMS. Remotely, you can send some SMS to any person. It is not a mobile. Before mobile, we have these pagers. People use these very much, but they cannot make a call. They can just only watch SMS messaging. This is pager device. We have another device, digital organizer. People used this digital organizer also very much. Before mobiles, we were using these very much. In this, you can store contacts. You can store your appointments. You can have a calculator. You will have a calendar. You can store some notes. All such things you can maintain in a digital organizer. We used to have a digital organizer. You know, so digital organizer. You know, these are digital organizer. This is a digital organizer actually. This is one digital organizer. We used to have the digital organizers like this. These are digital organizers. It looks like a calculator with a keypad. We can store notes, appointments, contacts, everything we can do with this. Usually people use this as a pocket diary. Usually people used to carry pocket diaries, pocket books earlier. Pocket books in their contacts, phone numbers, everything they note. After that, we started using these digital diaries very much, where we can open, store the notes, appointments, alarms, calculator, everything will be there. So this is organizer. And of course, you know, camera is for photos and videos, and phone is for calling. So to call, to communicate through calls, we use this phone. That means several years back, 10, 15 years back, people used to carry a pager. They used to carry a pocket diary, a camera. That means people who travel, people who go tour somewhere, a digital diaries will be there, a organizer pager will be there, a camera will be there. So now what is the concept is, now you people don't know all this. You people haven't seen pagers or used. So because your generation came with a mobile, that means your generation came with one device. And what is the device? This device is mobile. And this device can work like a pager. It can work like a organizer. It can work like a camera. It can work like a phone. So it have all behaviors. That means it is like a pager. It is like a organizer. It is like a camera. That is the reason, do you know, nobody technically, we don't ask what is your mobile number, because mobile don't have any numbers. Generally people ask what is your mobile number. That is technically wrong. Mobile don't have a number. Mobile phone number. It is not mobile number. It is mobile number means it's IME number. So you don't ask a mobile number to anyone, right? We ask your mobile phone number because mobile have a phone inside. Mobile is not phone. Mobile is not phone. Mobile have a phone behavior integrated into it. Mobile is not a phone. That means, for example, you see, Suppose you open Amazon or somebody, you want to log in into Amazon. What they ask, mobile phone number, not mobile number. Technically, nobody asks you mobile number. Mobile number means what? Model number. What you are asking? Tell me your mobile model number, IME number. What you will do with that, right? Mobile have a phone inside. That phone number you have to ask. And mobile is not just having a phone inside. Mobile is having a pager inside. Mobile is having a organizer inside. Mobile have a pager inside. And that pager is for SMS. I think you people know SMS servers are separate. Phone servers are separate. SMS servers are separate. You know, web in general, web designing, we have different types of hosting servers. Email servers separate, SMS servers separate. Technically, what is the concept here? Concept is earlier people have to carry different devices. Now they can carry one device which will do the work of pager, which will do the work of organizer, which will do the work of camera, which will do the work of phone. That means this mobile is having, so poly means many, and morphos means forms. That means this mobile exhibits polymorphism. Polymorphism means one device which can work for different situation. It can be used as a pager. For example, there is no SIM card inserted in a mobile. So now can't I use mobile for any another purpose? You can. You can use it as a camera. You can use it as a video, audio. You can use as an organizer. That means alternative behaviors. How one device can have different behaviors, and designing a one component for different behaviors. That is what we call as polymorphism. Polymorphism means create a component in such a way that it can have multiple behaviors. Generally, ordinary OOP learning people, they think polymorphism means overloading function, overloading methods. That's not the point. It is more than that. Polymorphism is about designing a component in such a way which can work for different situations. It can have alternative behaviors. So that is the concept of polymorphism. And how to achieve this polymorphism? How to design a component in such a way? That means technically the definition, we will see the point here. So what is the concept? Poly means many. So morphos means forms. So polymorphism. Polymorphism. Polymorphism means what? What is it? Polymorphism is a behavior. So polymorphism is a behavior where one component is a behavior, where one component can handle various types of functionalities. One component can handle various types of functionalities. So polymorphism is a behavior. So how to design a component that can work for different situations, different functionalities. So how technically we define this? That means this is okay. General concept you understood. General concept is one concept, one component have different behaviors. So different functionalities. How you do this in technical concept? Technically, it is nothing but means technically polymorphism allows single base class object to use the memory of multiple derived classes. Technically, polymorphism allows single base class object to use the memory of multiple derived classes. That is what actual technical definition is. Polymorphism is. One object can use different memories. Usually, when you create an object for a class, it can use the memory of that class. When you create an object for class, it can use a memory of that class. But if you can create an object in such a way which can use memory of different classes, that means how it is possible to create one object which can use memory of multiple classes. If you can do, that means you know polymorphism. If you say that I know polymorphism, then what you should able to do? You should create one object which can use the memory of different classes. If it can use the memory of different classes, usually an object of a class uses the memory of that class. But if it can use different classes memories, then it is exhibiting polymorphism. A developer can able to do that. That means he knows polymorphism. So how this is possible? Let's see. Suppose we are having a class employee. And here we have first name, last name, and designation, and print. Print. This print will print document dot write. It is going to print this dot first name and this dot last name and this dot designation and a break. So we are creating another class called developer. Developer. Developer is using the first name and some Raj, some name. Last name, this is Kumar. Actually, this developer is extends employee. Then you can use the members. We have designation. This designation is developer. Okay. And extra, it is having a role. So developer role is build something, debug, test, deploy, like this we use. And next important is print. It should print first name, last name, designation, which is already done by superclass print method. So we will use super dot what print. It should additionally print document dot write. So it should print this dot role, that it should print extra. That's additionally we added. Okay, now I am creating another class. This is admin. Admin is also employee, some another name, and this is admin. And we have admin role, admin role, admin role, some admin role authorizations. Okay. I will create another class that is also employee, means he have employee behavior. This is manager. So we given some name like this. Now this is what manager, and this is manager role, and some description about approvals, something. Okay. Now, how many classes, how many employees are there? We have three employees. One is developer, another admin, another manager. And all are using employee as a blueprint. They are using employee as a blueprint. Is there any relationship between developer and admin? There is no relationship between developer and admin and manager. They all are using one type. And what is the type? They are employee type. They are using employee type just to get the employee behavior, right? They are not related to each other. Now, what is your task is you need to create, one object. It should work for all three employees. That means you need to create one object which can work for all three classes. Now tell me for which class I have to create object. If you create for employee, only employee will come. Why developer will come? You create for manager, only manager will come. Is manager inherited from admin? No. Then how admin will come? You create employee, only employee will come. You create manager, only manager will come. Admin, only admin will come. Now, how do you create one object which can access all three classes, which can handle all three classes? So here I am creating employees. Employees uses a memory. It is an array. Into the array memory, in zero index, we will pass new developer. At one index, we pass new admin. At two index, we pass new manager. That means now how many objects are there? Only one object is there. But at zero, it is a developer. At one, it is admin. At two, it is manager. That means only one object. It is working for three. That means a single base class object can use the memory of multiple derived class. Then it exhibits polymorphism. That means now this employees object, it is not still done. Now what we will do? We will ask designation. Okay. We will prompt and we will say enter designation. Now what we need to do is we need to create a loop for where employee of employees. It is arena for where employee of employees. That means we are reading every employee from employees. If employee dot designation is matching with the designation we entered, then that employee print method should function. We should print his details. That means now here, now tell me what is this employee? Employee is an object. This object, first time, it is using the memory of developer. It is using the memory of developer. Second time, it is using the memory of admin. And third time, it is using the memory of manager. So one object exhibiting three behaviors. That means this employee object is exhibiting polymorphism. It is exhibiting polymorphism. Polymorphism is not about overloading function, overloading other concepts, which generally you people learn as a concept of polymorphism. It is not just only that. Polymorphism is about designing components which can have multiple behaviors. It can be anything. That means you are overloading the memory. You are overloading the memory. It can be variable memory, object memory, it can be function memory, it can be class memory, anything you can overload. That means now one object works for three classes. That means earlier what we do, we create three classes for three objects for three classes. We need to deal with three objects, three classes, then we need three objects. But now only one employee object and work for three classes. So you see now when I run this, what it is doing. When I run this, it is asking enter designation. So here I am entering the designation. Designation is manager. Then manager details will come. You entered the designation admin and admin details will come. You enter the designation of developer. Only developer details will come. To handle three classes, I need three objects. But now I designed only one object which can handle three classes. That means this exhibits what? Polymorphism. JavaScript is simple in handling this polymorphism. Any technology can do this. Your Java also can do this. In your .NET, Java, any OOP language can do this. Generally, what you do now in your Java or other language, you create employee. Employee, it is what type? So it is which class type? Employee class type. And you make it like a array. You make it like a array. You know your array declarations in your language. If you make it like a array, you know base class object can use the memory of derived classes. Already I told you previously one inheritance rule. A base class object can use the memory of derived class, but a derived class object cannot use the memory of base class. Why? Why a derived class object cannot use the memory of base class? Because as per the object rules, the memory of superclass must be loaded first, then followed by derived. You cannot call a derived class constructor without calling the superclass constructor. And if you are violating that rule, inheritance will fail. That means it will not work. Right? Actually, so many technical things are there. But JavaScript is not a OOP language, so I am not discussing OOP concepts here. I am discussing only what JavaScript can do. I am not going into the OOP concept detail, which generally OOP has a lot of things to understand technical. So here it supports inheritance limited. It supports polymorphism limited. And those we are discussing. That means in terms of JavaScript, how it can manage polymorphism, right? So this is one example for that. This is one example. That means you can syntactically here. So base class object uses the memory. Array you can declare anyway. New class 1. So like new class 2. You can define memory in any way. That means you have obj. So of base class object. That means what is the point? Obj of 0. At 0, what it is doing? It is using class 1 memory. 1, it is using class 2 memory. Class 1 memory, class 2 memory. Means just internally how it is managed. So instead of creating 3 objects for 3 classes, we can create only one object which can work for all 3 classes. So that is general about polymorphism here, how it works. This is one example to understand how the polymorphism works. I will copy this example here. That is the example of polymorphism. Next, once you understood all these concepts, now we can create a component using class, right? These are all the JavaScript class related basics you need to be familiar to use them in React. So now we will see how React class components are designed. And what is the key point? Already I told you that class components are still supported in React, but not recommended in modern code. Not recommended in modern code, which is the new code. Already I showed you this in official documentation itself. That means React community, why you already know why it is not recommended to use class, because you know what are the drawbacks of OOPS. So technically, you generally, when you started learning OOP languages, you know the concept of OOP. What are the drawbacks of OOPS? What is the issue of OOP? In real-time programming, we have 3 types of basic programming approaches: POPS, OBPS, and OOPS. In real-world programming, software development, so application development, we use 3 types of programming systems: process-oriented programming, object-based programming, and object-oriented programming. So object process-oriented programming, they support low-level features. They can directly interact with hardware. They uses less memory. They are fast. Example is C, Pascal, COBOL. These comes under POPS, process-oriented programming system. But they lack problems in reusability, separation, dynamic memories. These are issues with POPS. OBPS is good in reusability, extensibility, and all, but it is not completely extendable. That is the issue is OBPS. JavaScript comes under OBPS. JavaScript, Visual Basic, this comes under OBPS. Object-based programming system. Object-oriented programming system supports so many features like reusability, extensibility, code level securities and all. But what are the drawbacks of OOP languages? So what are the issues with OOP language? What is the issue with OOP concept? Right? So if anyone asks that, right? What are issues with OOP? There are so many issues with object-oriented programming. First important problem is, so OOP will not support, it will not support low level features. It will not support low level features. It cannot directly interact with hardware services. Hardware services. It uses more memory. It uses more memory. It is heavy and complex. So it is tedious. Tedious. It is tedious. These are all the drawbacks of OOPs. So you cannot say OOP language is great. It is not great every time and it is not required every time. And it is not suitable for several environments. So it have good features, but similarly, it is having so many drawbacks. These are all the issues of object-oriented programming. The issues with OOP, object-oriented programming. That is the reason to handle memory, like to handle speed, then you need to reduce the usage of OOP, right? So otherwise, OOP already having these drawbacks. These are the issues with OOP. For example, like we have refrigerator, washing machine, microwave ovens, air conditions. These all controlled by using a software. You have a small software, you open the remote, you control the fan speed, compressor on, off. You can control everything using a device. A software is there. And those are usually done by using not Java.NET. What do you think they are using Java programs? Java inside air condition, Java inside washing machine, microwave, it cannot handle. Because in a less memory, small chip is integrated into it. And you want so such heavy concept to add into this, it will not work out. That means OOP is not suitable in many situations. Even defense, weather forecasting, and space research, they also use Pascal, Visual Pascal, not Java or .NET. That means at a very high level, scientific level, they use Visual Pascal. They don't use any Java.NET, right? So technically, what is the concept here is these are very heavy. You are looking for features, then you have to compromise with speed. You have to compromise with memory. For example, your mobiles, smartphones, they use Android or iOS, which is built with Java. Android is built with core Java. Java is used for Android and iOS. They are built with Java, which is an OOP language. Phones which are not smartphones, they are not using Android iOS. Suppose you have 1,000 rupees phone. 1,000 rupees phone with just character base, no touch screen, nothing. You turn on this 1,000 rupees phone and you turn on your 20,000 phone, Android phone, and 1,000 rupees phone will get ready first. Your Android phone is still loading. 1,000 rupees phone will interact fast. It will never hang up. Your Android phone slow, sometime hangs up. You are looking for features, then compromise. You compromise with your speed. You compromise with your memory. That means why you mobile people are worried about 2 GB RAM, 6 GB RAM, 10 GB RAM, right? 10 GB RAM, 6 GB RAM, 8 GB RAM. After all, my laptop needs a 4 GB RAM enough, 6 GB RAM enough for doing certain operations. 6 GB RAM is enough. Why your mobile needs a 10 GB RAM, 16 GB RAM, 8 GB RAM? Why? Because the apps it has to control, it will slow down because they need more memory because it is Android, it is OOP. And what is meaning of tedious? Tedious in English means lazy, slow, very heavy. That is the meaning of tedious. OOP languages are always tedious. They are lazy. They are very slow. They need more memory. That's the reason we don't prefer OOP language everywhere. For every application development, we don't prefer OOP language because OOP languages have several drawbacks. Right? That is the reason you might have seen several mobiles come up with different operating systems. Different operating systems. So usually technical concept here is OOP has some drawbacks. And obviously any software sensible developer knows this and he don't recommend this everywhere. That means any person who know computer programming, he knows that using an OOP feature in any technology is heavy. It needs memory. That's the reason React like community, they avoid using this. Earlier they have to use this because earlier they don't have an alternative. Earlier they don't have an alternative. They have to depend on this because earlier functions were unable to do everything what they want to do. But now functions can do everything. Then they say that, okay, now we will ignore using classes. We don't want class. Classes uses more memory. Classes are heavy. That means, do you know in every advanced version when React introduces, they talk about speed. They talk about memory. They say that now less memory and more speed. You can improve the performance. React 19 also coming with the same concept. React 19 currently in beta release. It is not yet officially completely released. It is in beta release. And in React 19, they changed the compiler. In the coming React 19, the compiler is changed. Compiler is changed means they are adding new features to the compiler. What is the concern? Concern is to improve the speed. That is the point. Here, OOP is always slow. OOP is always heavy. OOP always needs more memory. So that is the problem. That is the reason class components will work in your React, but we don't recommend. So old version still using classes, but we don't recommend in modern. I showed you official document now. So this is the official document of React.js. This is React official document. That means this is the official document of React. This is official React website, React dev. And what these people say about the components. Class components are still supported by React, but we don't recommend using them in the new code. This is officially announced by React communities. That means React itself says that it will work, but we don't care now anymore. Don't use this. And they are not officially supporting this also. Any issues related to classes, they are not responsible now. They are not responsible now. That is the concept actually. So, but people who are not aware of what is modern happening, still struck up with old concepts. Such people still talk about class components, class related concepts. It's okay if you are still working in old version, that is okay. But in the modern React, no more classes, right? But we will learn because we have to work in some projects with these classes. What is difference also you will understand. So now how to create a class component? Let's see. Class components are not supported. So class component, React class component is just a JavaScript class, a JavaScript class is just a JavaScript class that implements component behavior, that implements component behavior from the base classes, from the base classes. Two classes are there. So React dot component class and React dot pure component class. So React component, React pure component. These are the base classes actually. That means, how do you create a class? Usually, how do we create a class here? Export class and the class name. Class name is login something. And this should extends React dot pure component or React dot component. So it extends any of these two. So if it extends, then it becomes a component. Just writing a class will not make that as a component. The component behavior gets when it extends the pure component or the component. Actually, why they have two base classes? What is difference between pure and impure? We call pure and impure component. Pure component is nothing but it is asynchronous and this is synchronous. Actually, that is no need to tell as asynchronous. Here, pure component is nothing but normal. Without pure component, what is the concept is this will load a component. If any change occurred in the component, it will reload the complete component again. To update the changes, it will reload the component again. So every time a component is loaded, whenever change occurred in the component, entire component is loaded, even a small change occurred in the component. But pure component means it will load only the changes. It will not load the entire component. It loads only the changes. It updates only the changes. So if you want entire component to reload again, then you implement component. If you want only changes to update, then you use an pure. We have two types of base classes for that. So what is the difference here is, so React component loads the component loads the component every time, whenever whenever changes are tracked, whenever changes are tracked. It reloads entire component to update any specific change. So React.pure component loads only loads and updates only the changes without reloading the complete component. We have component and pure component. So in React interviews, these questions are very common. What is difference between pure component, impure component? What is difference between controlled component, uncontrolled component? Controlled and uncontrolled we learned. These terms are very popular actually. But pure and impure components, they are useless questions in modern React because we don't use them at all. That's not a concept also. That means, but still people struck up with old versions and they want some people to work on those versions. They ask this, right? But now usually even interviewer have to upgrade themselves because even interviewer should know that this is no longer a proper question to ask to the modern React learners. Because modern React learners, they don't need any pure impure components because everything they can manage by using asynchronous functions. Asynchronous functions. They have a lot of asynchronous functions. They don't need this pure impure. If anybody talking about still pure impure means he's still not into modern generation. He's still stuck up at certain location. He need to he need to upgrade himself. Right. So technically, this is a question for experienced people regularly because they have to deal with old versions. Okay, now let's see. We will go to our SRC folder and I will add a folder called class components. In the class components, we make sure that we don't add anything same names because component names should not collide with each other, right? So even you are creating with a function or a class. So in class component, I added a demo here. Suppose I'm using as class home, something like this, or something. We just give this as some product. Product is a component. Okay, in this, I will add a new file. Files are same. What is the new file? Product dot what? JSX. Okay, so this I need to create export class this time. This time it is not a function, it is a class. And rules here same. It should start with a capital letter. Product is a component name. Class, you know how to create. This is how we create a class. Class name. But this is a ordinary JavaScript class. React will not recognize this as a component. Then how it gets a component behavior? It has to extends. What it should extend? It should extend what? React dot component or it should extend what? React dot pure component. It should extend pure component or component, anything. You will see regularly component regularly. Pure component very few times. Pure component we use when we create a uncontrolled component. When we create a controlled component should update inside a component. In that case, we use pure. Anyhow, any individually also we can design a pure component. But major you will see uh, React component. Pure component is used for controlled components because controlled components are used as a part of component. When they are used as a part of component, we want to reload that part only without reloading the complete component. So that is the reason, depends on the requirement. So this is the component. Okay. Now, now what is the second rule? Is now product is a component, but it is a class. You know that class have some problems related to inheritance and all. That means now this class product is extending this class. And usually in the product class, you configure a constructor. Class have a constructor. Without a constructor also you can define. But I will explain next level. In the next level, you will understand state and state related configurations, everything we do in the constructor. That means every component needs a constructor if it has to use a state. If a component have to use a state, the state is created at the time of constructing the component. So every component that you design, if you want to use a state for it, then you have to configure a constructor. So constructor is compulsory. So what is the next part? Next part is every component class, every class component must configure a constructor in order to use state. Every class component must configure a constructor in order to use state. Why? I will show you. We will see that. So a constructor is mandatory to define. So now what happens is you have to define a constructor. How to write a constructor we learned. In a class component, constructor is defined. So you know already we discussed it is written by using constructor. Okay. Now when you return an explicit constructor in a derived class, now you have a problem. What is it? You created a constructor in derived class. Now you have a problem. What is the problem? Inheritance rule will fail. Because in other technologies, base class constructor is automatically called, but in JavaScript, it is not. You have to explicitly call. So what you have to do now, another important. So React component constructor, React component constructor must call the super constructor. That is the basic rule of inheritance we learned. I showed you already, it fails inheritance. So that means what we have to do. So syntactically, we have export class product extends component. In that we have a constructor, and this constructor should call the super constructor. That is the basic. That is the rule. If you miss these rules, then inheritance will fail. Then several technical issues will come. Now we learned about rules of construct component in the beginning. What is another rule about component? We learned rules about component. Now, what is another important rule about component? Component cannot be void. It must return. How a class will return? A component must return some markup. A, a component should return JSX. Na? Every React component must return JSX. That is rule. Now, how a class will return? Function will have a return. Fine. How a class will return? Otherwise, it is not a component. It must return. How a class will return? So, class component, class component must return JSX using render method. Using render method. Class cannot return anything directly. Class can have a method which can return. Class cannot directly return anything. Class can have a method. That method can return. Usually class can have methods with void type and return type. And it is mandatory that every class component should use a render method. Actually, render is a base class method. So what is this render? So render is a base class method. It is a base class method used to render JSX. It is a base class method. Who is that base class? React dot component. Component is the base class. Component or pure component, they have a method called render. So now what we need to do is we need to create a component. So here we need to create. So first you need to call super. That is compulsory. After that, we need to define a render method. This render method have to return what it should return. It should return the markup. It should return the markup. That means that is the so class name. Rest of concept is same. That means inside this, whatever you do is same. Right here we are defining some product class component, something like this header. So it should use a render method. Render method will return JSX fragment. How to return a fragment we already know. It should return only one fragment. This rest of concept same. That means whatever you write inside is same what you done in function, right? So what you need to do syntactically here. Now we have export class product. This extends react.component. We have a constructor which uses the super constructor. And we have a render method which will return a markup. This is JSX. That render is going to return this. So now the class component is ready. Right? That is the class components. So let's see, the class component is ready now. So we will keep in the startup. So you know what to do. So to set up in the startup, go to index. Rest of this part is same. In the index, it should start with which one? So it should start with what? Product. Product component we have to import. We are importing the product component from class. In that product folder, we have a product module. We are defining this. So this is how we define a component. Okay. Now, basic structure is ready. We are rendering this. The result will be there. Now, how to handle data inside this component? Already I told you we handle data. You can use variables, but variables are immutable in a component. That's the reason we have to use a state. In a class, actually properties are mutable. But in a class component, properties become immutable. Class component, properties become immutable. Then you cannot use properties to deal data in a component. In a JavaScript class, we can use properties. And what difference we discussed about properties and variables? We discussed that variables are immutable and properties are mutable. But in a component class, again, these properties become immutable. Once you inherit the component base, properties are immutable. Then we cannot use properties for data. We can store, but it will be immutable data. They cannot change according to the structure. Then we need a state. That means generally properties can work. For example, see here, product class component is working same. So properties, how to declare properties? Suppose we have a property called some product name. Product name is a property. In that property, we can store some data. So some Samsung TV, something. And here we are designing a data list, some data term, some product name, and data definition we want to display. How to access the properties of a class? By using this dot, what is the property? Product name. And it is going to access that and use it. But this is not recommended. So that means in a class, actually we store data in properties. We can access the properties and use. Can I use a variable in a class? No, we can't use because variables cannot be class members. Then obviously we can use property, but it is not recommended, right? So then how do we handle data? That is the key point here. So see here, technical point about this is, yeah. So let's say here, yeah, state in class component, state in class component. First point is class component can use a property to store data. Can use a property to store data. Properties in component class are immutable. Properties in component class are immutable. are immutable. Hence, it is recommended to use state. Hence, it is recommended to use state. But what is the problem is class component, class component cannot use React hooks. Yep. So let's continue. Yes. So class component is configured. So class component is configured with implicit state. Implicit state. It have a state internally. That is the reason you don't need any hook. It have a implicit state. So which is derived from component base, which is derived from component base. So here use state, use effects, these don't work. But what is speciality is internally class have a state. We don't need any separate hooks for that. That is the reason earlier old version people of React, what they used to complain on function. They say that functions are stateless and classes are stateful. That means they can use state, functions cannot use state. Is it true? Is it true that function cannot use a state? That is your old knowledge. Functions can now use state. Earlier, they have that complaint that function cannot have a state. But another point is implicit state, it is not there. Explicitly, we have to import in a function. But class have implicit state. Implicit, internally state is configured. And that is the point here. So we don't use property for handling the data. Then how do we configure the state? In the constructor, we configure this dot state. And state is an object. State is an object. In the state object, you can have keys, values. Key is, suppose product name is a key. And what is the value? Value is some Samsung TV. You can have some cities. What is cities? Cities is an array. Cities is an array. You can have some rating. Rating is some object. It have rate like 4.2. This is how the state is configured. Now we don't use properties. We configure state. Now how to access the value? How we can access the state and use the state? Remember, I am not importing anything. I'm just using an internal state. That means we need to configure a state. And Just we have to access this dot state have a product name. It will get the product name and display the product name there. And you can see that. So it is asking the must call a constructor in derived class. Already we are calling the constructor in derived class, but it is before you configure anything. You configure anything. That is the basic rule. If you miss that, it will fail. Already we discussed that, right? This is the basic rule of inheritance. Now we can access cities. Suppose we are printing cities. How do you print the cities? Suppose we are having a dynamic. This dot what? State dot what? Cities map, and read every city. And for every city, you print an list item. So, and this list item key, these all basics are same. Means how you present is same. Only the concept where you store the data is different. That means it is going to display like this. That means we can access the data. So data rating comes with what? So here we have product, sorry, this dot what? State dot rating, and rating dot rate. It is going to get that and display that rating. That is how we manage state in a class component. In a class component, you don't have any use state. You directly import the state. And remember, state must be imported and configured in constructor only. You cannot do in any another method of class. You have to do in constructor. At the time of constructing an object for the class, state is configured. If anybody asks in interview why it is written in constructor only, because while constructing only state can be configured. After constructing, state cannot be configured. And at the time of constructing, if any activity need to be performed, you have to define where? Inside constructor. Inside constructor. That is how we can define the state and access the state. This is an example. That means syntactically here, we have a constructor. In the constructor, we have a super constructor. And here we configure this dot what? State. State is an object. Will have a key and a value. Now how to access this? We access this dot state dot key. That's just a simple point. Example, I will give this one, that is product.jsx. It is a product component. That is example of that, right? Now here, so many changes you will find. That means here you saw state is different. Now, how about data binding, style binding, class binding, event binding works here, right? That means same concepts, but in class, how do we do? That we'll see in tomorrow's session. In tomorrow's session, we will see data. Already this is data binding only, storing the data, accessing the data. We will learn style binding, class binding, event binding. Are there any changes? What are the changes in classes and functions? Tomorrow we'll continue. Okay, right.